Hello. So we're going to pick up where we left off, which was PsycInfo, and we're going to talk about secondary data. So first of all, what is secondary data? Secondary data analysis. So secondary data analysis is analysis of data that was previously collected. So it's in contrast to primary data analysis, where the researcher designs, collects, and analyzes the data, often using a survey or other types of tests. Secondary data analysis, in the broadest sense, is analysis of data collected by someone else. Secondary data can include any data that are examined to answer a research question other than the questions for which the data were initially collected. So those are kind of some of the keys for secondary data analysis. So where can you find secondary data? Anywhere online, even in your own backyard, so to speak. So where you work might have data that you can use for your secondary data analysis. So secondary data can be quantitative and qualitative, I guess, or qualitative. It's not one or the other. So even some of you who are interested in doing qualitative research, I have a friend of mine who just graduated in May, and his was a qualitative research done with secondary data. So even though in general we think of it often as quantitative data, you can absolutely use secondary data for your qualitative dissertation. It can be public or restricted. It can be direct or indirect, just meaning it could be directly collected from the people, or it could be indirectly collected from someone. There are many sources, almost unlimited types, so government-funded data sets, university college records, statewide district-level K-12, public data sets, business data sets. I've seen stock market data sets, city data sets, town, state, country. There's just tons and tons of different places that collect and make their data publicly available. In my case, I did use secondary data for my dissertation. I used data from the school that I work at, and so it's not publicly available in terms of it's just not out on a website, but I was able to go through the IRB process both at Cumberland and then at my college for them to give me access to the secondary data that I wanted to use for my dissertation. So what are advantages? So first of all, the study design and data collection is already completed. So this saves a lot of time and money. So as someone who did a secondary data dissertation, I will say it was fabulous. As soon as I got my IRB from Cumberland, I was able to submit that to my college, and within a week, I had all of my dissertation data. So for my fellow colleagues who within the first week, they were just trying to, send that survey out and just hoping people would take their survey, I already had all of my data and I was jumping right in and playing with it. So you can have access to international and cross-historical data that would otherwise take several years and millions of dollars to collect. It's ideal for use in classroom examples, semester projects, master's theses, dissertations. Data might be of higher quality. Studies funded by the government generally involve larger samples that are more representative of the target population, which is external validity. Sometimes we also get oversampling of low prevalence groups' behaviors, which allow for increased statistical precision. And data sets often contain considerable breadth, so thousands of variables. So instead of, you're doing a survey and you're crossing your fingers and you're hoping to get, 120 or 80 or whatever it is that your G-Power is telling you that you need for your sample size, well, with most secondary data, you've got way more data than you need to hit that minimum. So what are some disadvantages of secondary data? Some disadvantages include study design and data collection are already completed. So I know that seems like, well, it saves time and money, but your data might not fit with specific research questions. So because the data is already there, you can't retroactively say, okay, but that's great. I also need to know XYZ about the participant. You don't get to do that. You get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Information regarding study design and data collection procedures may be scarce, so you might not get a lot of that information in terms of how was the data collected, what were the procedures. Data may potentially lack depth. The greater the breadth, the harder it is to measure any one construct in depth. Constructs might be operationally defined by a single survey item, or a subset of test items which can lead to reliability and validity concerns. Also, attempts to construct measurement models might be unsuccessful. Survey items might not fit together, and certain fields or departments might place less value on secondary data analysis. So all of those are just potential disadvantages of secondary data. So while there are lots of advantages, just keep in mind those disadvantages if you're thinking about maybe doing that for your dissertation. So we're going to go ahead and stop here and then pick up with the secondary data walkthrough.